you arrived in Oxford in 1982, and during this time, we have PcGive, GiveWin, PCGets, Stump, Garch, Oxmetrics, a whole lot of programs, libraries, and languages that you have been to different degrees involved in creating, right? Can you give us kind of the common thread or the common driver of all of these projects?
Yeah, they all derive from the work I'd done previously at LSE on mainframe computing in the program library we called AUTOREG, which dealt with a vast range of estimators of different kinds, Monte Carlo methods of different kinds, data generation programs, etc. All those programs, by the way, were in punch cards, right? But LSE tried to put them all on tape and send the tapes to Oxford so they could put them in their system. And several of the programs disappeared in that process. And I was left with a rump of programs to build on. But at the same time, IBM came out with the 8088 IBM PC that I bought. £6,500 in 1982.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, wow, indeed. Today, that's the equivalent to about £15,000 for it had a 10 megabyte hard disk, it had 640K of RAM, it had a color screen, it had a math coprocessor, and it had a connection to telephone lines so that I could log into the university's computer. And that was the state of the art at the time. And it ran in MS-DOS. Now, I have to tell you a story about it. That is, as soon as it arrived, it took me a long time to work out how to get it to do anything. But eventually I did. And the first thing I did was to get it to add up all the numbers from 1 to 10. And then I looked at what it had. It went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Number 6 was missing. So I contacted the people who'd supplied the computers and I said, there's no number 6. You can't use this computer for anything. So they took it back and they agreed the motherboard was faulty and they put a new one in, and the next time it went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But that delayed it by about, I don't know, 2 months or something, while they were really puzzled. They did quickly ascertain there was no 6. I don't know how you could write a computer that had no 6 in it.
And it's very interesting about the state of the art of the time, actually.
Yep, isn't it?
And
the math coprocessor was fantastic. It speeded up calculations like inverting a 10 by 10 matrix by about a factor of about 10 relative to the computer without the math coprocessor. And I realized that that was the future. Mainframe computing would not be helpful because you needed to visualize things, you needed menu-driven programs, etc. So I spent the next 3 years converting big chunks of the software onto PCs. It was very tedious. I don't know how many hundreds of hours I spent to get the very first version because, I mean, most of the 640K was taken up by the compiler. I purchased a Fortran compiler that worked on IBM PCs. It was in 2 disks, right? The floppy disks held so little, you had to have 2 of them, but it had a system for connecting up. So you put the first one in, loaded it, and you put the second one in, loaded it, and then the Fortran compiler started working. Right? So the amount of space left to feed in data and run. The version was a nightmare until eventually the 8086 came along, and that allowed you to have about 5 megabytes of short-term memory and 100 megabyte hard disks. They were seen as enormous at the time. Of course, now they're completely trivial. And then I could get a menu-driven version, which I called PcGive.
At some point, you also changed from Fortran to C.
No, I didn't.
Because...
Right. When I hired Jürgen, he said,
right.
You know, your programs are stuck together with sealing wax and string. They're going to fall apart any minute. And Fortran's hopelessly inefficient for the front end. It's great for the computational engine, but the front end's impossible, which I had written, right? It's hard to believe I had menu-driven programs in Fortran. Yeah, to write a front end in Fortran is a nightmare, right? It just isn't. It's not designed for that. So I had spent, I would have said, more than 2/3 of the time in PcGive getting the front end, because the computations were trivial. I already had all the Fortran algebra from the LSE days. But the front end was a nightmare. And Jürgen said, you'll never get good front ends in Fortran. And I think that's still true today. Whereas C makes it very easy to have threads connecting things, so you can have very good and clear front ends. And also, we'd spent ages developing machine language graphics, because Fortran wasn't a graphics program, whereas C is a graphics program. So we could switch from this tedious point-by-point stuff to draw a graph to actually just calling an algorithm in C to draw a graph. You might be interested that Jürgen Dörnig has recently created a living museum of PcGive, in which he's using a system that lets you mimic what the MS-DOS computers like the IBM 8088 were like at the time, and run the version of PcGive that was developed on it at the time. And so you can see the limitations of speed, of storage, of memory, etc., in operation. But that's a living museum in the same way as archaeologists build a village that you can go back and pretend to live in the 19th century or the 13th century or whatever.